All right, so we're going to be discussing the miracles of Jesus this week. All right. And I think everybody's on the right page, looks like.
33.
Well. All right. So miracles are, generally speaking, the interruption by God of the natural course of events or the laws of physics, producing an observable reaction. Bless you.
Thanks, sir.
Reaction?
Yeah, just reaction, not bless you.
Reaction, bless you.
Miracles may present many faces, stopping the movement of heavenly bodies, opening locked gates, or raising dead persons to life. God can and has used nature in the operation of miracles, such as the parting of the Red Sea by the east wind. The most fascinating of all the biblical miracles occurred in the ministry of Jesus. Those are the miracles we will focus on in this lesson. Now, it was inevitable that Jesus would be a miracle worker. He was God. Everything God does is a miracle, from the creation, making something from nothing, of the world, to the stopping the universe for Joshua. He has demonstrated his transcendence over all things, spiritual or temporal. See, that's a good point, too, where for Joshua, it wasn't just merely having the sun stand still. Mm-hmm. He had to stop the entire universe from completely rotating in its whole point. Because if you were to just stop the Earth from rotating around the sun, all the other planets would still be going.
Right.
And you'd have some severely messed up things there. I mean, so we're talking like the Earth stopped, the Moon stopped, all the other planets in the universe stopped, or our galaxy, I should say, plus all of everything else. Because everything from what they've been able to pinpoint is, the more they go out, it seems like it's just this huge circle that the wider they go out, it just keeps spinning out and out and out. So all of that had to stop.
From what they can see, the universe is time within 4 picoseconds.
Yeah.
Which is the time it takes light to travel the width of a sheet of paper.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking meteors, we're talking comets, we're talking, I mean, so there's a lot of stuff that just came to a grinding halt. Just because God wanted it to.
Not to mention everything else that would have had to stop. I mean, if Earth suddenly stops, I mean, it's like mass chaos.
Yeah. So in order to do
birds falling out of the sky, I mean, like all sorts of stuff.
So imagine all that coming to a stop, and yet God being able to
and everything's still going.
Keep everything in order.
Right.
You know, like, man, that's pretty amazing, really.
But even if it was just the Earth, it's a miracle that he was able to stop it for that amount of times, the amount of times he did stop it, and the timing still worked out. Mm-hmm. The chances that it could fall back into whatever scheme. So either way you want to look at it, it's still amazing.
Yeah. All right, he is not subject to natural law. From the virgin birth, by passing the biological order, to the ascension, overcoming the laws of gravity, Jesus demonstrated his power over all things in every realm. That is why it is so easy to assert that he is more than a man. He is God. A true miracle is beyond the power of man to perform alone. God has to be involved. Now, aside from supernatural manifestations, such as angelic announcements, the virgin birth, the star that guided the wise men, Jesus passing through hostile mobs, cleansing the temple, the transfiguration, soldiers falling, darkness at the crucifixion, the rent veil, the tombs opened, the earthquake, Jesus' resurrection, and angel appearances, there are 35 recorded miracles which Jesus performed. So 35. These include 17 bodily cures or healings, 9 miracles over the forces of nature, 6 deliverances of demoniacs, and 3 raised from the dead. Added to these are the instances where mass miracles in human
Oh, they're missing a blank. All right, yeah, 35 should be here, up in that corner.
Okay. Oh, you're missing a line in the outline.
Yeah.
Okay.
right beside angel appearances there are 35. That should be a blank line.
There you
I was wondering what you're still reading. So,
go. And then mass miracles.
Not miracles during a mass, just mass.
Right,
Oh.
right. Yeah.
We're both the Catholics, like, see,
Go for
what
it.
I went to a funeral mass Monday, earlier this week, and that was like, I mean,
It's the other reason why your knees are hurting.
no, I didn't kneel.
Oh, okay.
I will not. I just will not kneel. I won't take communion. I won't.
Mm-hmm.
None of that stuff. I won't. And it's not being. I just get off topic. I know it's not. It's not being rebellious or trying to show anything like that. It's just if someone should ask me why do you kneel? Well, because I don't kneel before idols, and that's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've got all these other idols up here. You've got that thing you call communion stored up there. That's all idols. I'm not, no.
same thing.
Well, not kneel. But the priest who was overseeing the funeral mass service, I felt absolutely sorry. There was points in me that I wanted to just like say no. like no, my Lord, like why would you even say that? That's not even scriptural. I mean, he was talking on purgatory. He was talking on, should he be there? He will need your prayers, and you need to pray for him always. That he'll make it out, and you'll be all reunited. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
You need to snack up here?
So it was just.
Yeah.
It was very disturbing, is what it was.
Oh, yes.
For lack of a better word, really, to kind of sum it up. But it was pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
And I had a couple conversations with people after, and not net bad or anything else, but just
Edification.
yeah, it was just in general talking, and kind of just very mildly and politely just refuting things in some ways, and calling into question maybe some other things. Maybe not outright trying to denounce something, but saying, hey, I never saw that in the Bible, or what was that big? Yeah, just different things, but it was pretty disturbing.
Brother Colin ran up and tipped over Mary.
I did attend a Catholic school when I was younger, between 6th and 8th grades, and we had some bad fun, I should say. Mischievous Catholic student fun. Yeah. I'm sure it gave the nuns many a heart palpitation, anxiety at nighttime, and I can't imagine how many prayers were said for our behalf. I'm sure they thought we were wind up at least in purgatory. At the bare minimum.
Or at least they were happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They go.
Yeah, I remember those days, wow. Interesting. Okay, so many other things Jesus did which, if they should be written, everyone, I suppose that even the world itself would not contain the books. And that's what John had ended his gospel with. There's no word there.
First one's war, right?
World, yeah. Now, Christ's first miracle. This is where we're going to get into the wine and stuff. So this will answer a lot of things. The first of anything is usually the most dramatic and or important. Okay. John seems to indicate that Jesus' first miracle was performed on the 3rd day after his baptism. He had traveled from Jordan to attend a wedding feast in Cana of Galilee. It was not far from his hometown Nazareth. And the parties may have been relatives or even close friends. At the reception, the host failed to provide enough wine for all who came. When the supply of wine was depleted, Jesus was informed of it through his mother. He called for the servants to fill the water pots with water, and bring them to him. When they had filled them to the brim, Jesus instructed them to dip some out and take it to the master of the feast. When he tasted the water which had been turned into wine, he thought that the servants had saved the best until the last.
For the
So
best.
Yep, the best. So what Jesus does, he does well. There are many interesting sidelights which could be introduced surrounding this first miracle, the purpose of which was to manifest his glory. The most oft-discussed aspect of it is whether Jesus turned the water into fermented wine. Did he or didn't he? Now, some believe that both the wine initially provided at the wedding and the wine made by Jesus were intoxicants. Consumed in great quantity. If this thesis is accepted, then the following implications must be acknowledged and reckoned with. The guests at the wedding had already consumed a substantial amount, so they would likely be drunk. Mary, the mother of Jesus, would be regretting that the intoxicating drink had run out and would be asking Jesus to furnish the already drunken festivity with more fermented wine. I highly doubt his mother would have asked Jesus, in layman's terms, to go do a beer run.
I know.
Unless she had a drinking problem herself.
Yeah.
Not to mention, though, it was the
I was
best.
under the influence. DUI back then was a donkey. Driving a donkey under the influence. You got not just a DUI, you got a DDU. I would not like to
But
say that.
since he's a God that cannot sin, that would create a second issue.
Exactly. So that's where we get into some of the other things.
Yeah.
Now, in order to oblige his mother's wishes, Jesus would be making approximately 120 to 180 gallons of intoxicating wine. Quite more than enough to keep the celebrants drunk. Jesus would be making this intoxicating wine as his very first miraculous sign in order to reveal his glory and to persuade people to believe on him as the holy and righteous Son of God. I have provided you wine.
Yeah.
That kind of wine.
That's a very good point right there.
Yeah, I don't think that's what
Seems
happened.
legit.
Yes.
Who would be sober enough to attest to the fact that he did it?
It's like, where did that come from?
Exactly.
Was that just in the corner? Was that always here? You hit it, didn't you? I could hear the conversation. Can imagine it anyway. Hey, were you hiding that?
Or he made
I
some
thought you said
very
about the ball.
powerful friends.
Well, how much did that cost? Who paid for that?
Exactly.
So, to allege that Jesus, this is some side notes here, okay? To allege that Jesus made and used alcoholic wine is not only beyond the warrant of exegetical requirement, but leads us into conflict with moral principles embedded in the total witness of Scripture.
Yep.
An interpretation that involves such assertions and contradictions cannot justifiably be adopted. I mean, wow. The normal uses of wine by the Jews in biblical days differed from today's uses. Okay. The wine of old was freshly squeezed grape juice. Okay. Preserved grape juice, juice from dried grapes, grape wine made from grape syrup and water, and fermented or unfermented stored wine diluted with water at a ratio as high as 20 to 1. Okay, so the potency was just not there. If the wine was fermented and served unmixed, it was considered barbaric,
Yeah.
much like the Romans and Greeks had.
Yeah.
Defiling and incapable of being blessed by the rabbis, because the rabbis in no right mind of theirs would ever bless that.
Exactly.
It was unholy. In the light of these facts, it is impossible to defend the modern-day practices of drinking alcoholic beverages on the basis of the Jews' use of wine in biblical times. So what we drink in communion is very fitting
Yes.
of what was probably actually celebrated with
Yep.
at the Last Supper.
Last Supper.
Okay. Furthermore, Christians of biblical days were even more cautious about the various kinds of wine than the Jews were even. So they were even extra cautious.
Mhm.
Now in his second chapter, John records that Jesus made wine out of water at a wedding at Cana. The question is, what kind of wine? Okay. As we've seen, it could be fermented or unfermented, full strength or diluted. We must determine our answer to this question by contextual implication and moral likelihood. The position of the study is that Jesus made wine that was pure, unfermented grape juice. The following data supplies strong rationale for rejecting wine. One, the primary object of this miracle was to reveal his glory. In such a way was to induce personal faith in him as God's holy and righteous Son who came to save people from their sin. To suggest that Christ showed his divinity as the one and only Son of the Father by miraculously creating gallons of intoxicating wine for a drunken party, which implies that the people had already drunk freely and that this was immensely important to his messianic mission, requires an irreverence few are even willing to display.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I run across many of them nowadays. They must be brute. It would testify more to God's honor and the glory and honor of Christ to believe that Christ supernaturally created the same juice of the grape that God makes annually through the process of his natural created order. So he was able to take a natural order and miraculously recreate it on the spot.
Yes.
Boom, that fast. Versus something that took all that time to do.
Oh, yeah.
This miracle therefore points to Christ's sovereignty over the natural world and becomes a symbol of his power to transform sinful people spiritually into God's children. Number two, it is contrary to scriptural revelation concerning Christ's obedience to his heavenly Father. To suppose that he disobeyed the Father's moral command, do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly, when it is fermented, i.e., basically. That's in Proverbs 23 and 31. So he would be in direct contradiction to Scripture. Okay. Indeed, Christ would have supported that the biblical passages that condemn intoxicating wine as a mocker and beer as a brawler. And the words of Habakkuk, woe to him who gives drink to his neighbors, pouring it till they are drunk. Okay. 3. Furthermore, note the following modern medical evidence. Leading medical experts have found unmistakable evidence that moderate alcohol consumption is damaging to the reproductive systems of women of childbearing age, causing miscarriages and births of babies with incurable mental and physical defects. We know this. So, would authorities on early embryology maintain that women who drink even moderate amounts of alcohol around the time of conception, about a 48-hour time period, risk damaging the chromosomes of an egg preparing to leave the ovary, and this causing disastrous results to the mental and physical development of the infant? It was a wedding. I'm sure they were going to seal the wedding that night. I don't think they were going to wait longer than 48 hours if they were drinking.
Right.
B, it would be theologically absurd to maintain that Jesus encouraged the use of alcoholic beverages at a wedding that included many women, as well as a young bride with the possibility of immediate conception. To maintain that he did not know the potential terrible effects of intoxicating drink on unborn children is to call into question his divinity. Jesus didn't know? Yeah, seriously?
Maybe they could say that was his second.
So the only sound conclusion, rationally, theologically, and biblically, is that the wine Christ made at the wedding to reveal his glory was pure, sweet, unfermented fruit of the vine. They also refer to anything of the vine as wine in the Bible, through Psalms and all through that. Okay. Section 2, the methods of Jesus' miracles. One of the interesting aspects of the miracles of Jesus is that he utilized so many different methods to effect the desired result. Our faith should encompass the possibility that Jesus can still use any of these, or any other methods to perform as well. He's not limited to any one means of performing a miracle. It does not have to be done in a way that he has used before. God is still very creative.
He is.
A, an act of Jesus' will. The healing of the Syro-Phoenician woman's daughter. So, when Jesus saw her great faith, he simply willed it that it be done, and her daughter was healed from that very hour. Okay. The tax money found in the fish's mouth. This one always blows me away. There's a lot of things I'm like, wow, really? Like, I mean, think about it.
Can we get one of those fish?
Of all the fish, the very first one Peter's going to catch will have exactly what's needed in a coin
Tax, yeah.
to go pay the taxes.
Yeah.
Not the same. That first. I'm sure Peter, when he caught that fish and opened his mouth, going, whoa. That'd be mind-blowing when you think about it. And it would blow my mind. Wow, what is that shiny thing? That is a coin. Look at that. Jesus told Peter that the sons of the kingdom would be exempt from the payment of the temple tax levied against the Jews. But, to not offend the kings of the earth, they would pay them. He instructed the apostle to go to the lake and throw out a line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours. He simply willed the fish would have the money in its mouth, and it would be the first fish that Peter would catch. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's crazy. He said, you know what? That's the way it'll be.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. I would love to know where the coin came from originally. That's what I always wondered. Like, was it like a wishing well?
Did someone accidentally drop the coin, ate it, the fish ate it, and God was like, by the way,
And I mean,
the first fish you're going to catch is going to be the one that had it.
Because I always figured, like, when it gets dropped, right, and it goes through the water, you've seen coins where they flip in the water. And I imagine it would look like a lure or something, because fishes are always attracted to the shiny lure.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff. So he probably would have grabbed it real quick. But that's just so amazing.
Yeah, but then how would he catch the first one that he catches is gonna be the one with the coin?
And how often does that happen?
That's so cool.
And how often does that coin happen that falls in there or whatever? Yeah.
I mean, it was enough to pay their
Exactly.
taxes.
Exactly.
It's not just
Exactly.
one guy's taxes.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like it's a wishing fountain where you throw in a
Handful of
quarter or
pennies or
something.
something.
Yeah.
Most of those you can get the money legally. Go ahead and pull it out. If it's a public fountain, you can. If it's a public fountain, you technically can.
He's right. Just took the IRS and it stands for tax on it.
Right.
That's income now. Does that go under tips? I received a tip to go to the pond or the well and fish out all the money.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's like, how? Anyway.
People yell like, those
It's
are
like, why haven't
wishes,
they passed
yes.
a law to stop that? But
It's like people yelling at you as you're plodding through the net. Those are wishes, and they have me fulfilled my wish. Very much so. Thank you all.
Oh, yeah.
mine's granted. How about yours?
Anyway, so the healing of the centurion servant.
I don't really see miracles anymore, though.
Yeah.
There you go.
Here's an example of a man who had faith in the healing power of Jesus. The centurion believed that Jesus could just say the word and his servant would be healed. He understood temporal authority, and he figured that divine authority would work along the same lines. When Jesus saw his tremendous faith, greater than he had seen in Israel, he willed that the servant be whole, and he was healed from that very hour. There were others who received their miracle through this method. Now, by the spoken word, raising of the dead. Okay, Jesus spoke to the deceased son of a widow of Nain to arise, and arise he did. He called to Lazarus by name, and he came forth from the tomb. I like to think he did it for a purpose when he called out his name. Because can you imagine if he just went to the graveyard and he said, arise, and you see like everybody coming. So I'm sure he had to specifically say, no, Lazarus.
No,
You.
Lazarus.
Yes.
Oh, what man?
I always thought about that sometimes. Deliverance from demons. When Jesus speaks, demons listen. Physical healing. Jesus spoke to the man who had leprosy, saying he was willing to heal him. Be thou clean. With that word, the leprosy disappeared. He didn't even have to dip in the Jordan River. It is noteworthy that Jesus incorporated two methods with the leper, though. He reached out and touched him and also spoke the word. The woman in Luke 13 had been crippled for 18 years. Jesus called her forward and said, Woman, thou art loosened from thine infirmity. By his touch. Now, in 11 miracles, Jesus touched those he healed. First man was a blind man in Bethsaida. This is actually a pretty noteworthy incident. The local people brought a blind man to Jesus and begged him to touch him. It might have even been that they wished to test Jesus on a hard case. So if so, that may have been the reason. He took the man outside the village to actually minister to him.
Yeah.
When they were alone, he spat on the man's eyes, then laid his hands on him. Partial, unclear sight came to the man. Jesus put his hands on him the second time, after which the man could see clearly. One wonders why Jesus had to put his hands on him twice. This was the Master's touch, the fingers of God. So it is simple to type that with the need for a second birth or for a second touch after initial salvation. Basically, hence the second touch. I always kind of wondered myself, like, why it took two, but I kind of actually thought about it where it was in line with the people were testing him. So it wasn't like others who you saw, Lord, Lord, heal me, where they were already prepared for healing and they were like screaming out, calling out, trying to struggle to reach or touch him, that kind of thing. This was someone who was brought to him. So it wasn't like, I tend to think of it as that level of faith wasn't built like the others per se, but began to grow and like, maybe, yeah, I mean, it is Jesus, why, if they're saying he could probably heal me, I guess so. And then like a partial faith, almost, where the man believed, and then when he started receiving full sight, he said, oh, he can do this. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, but who knows?
That's kind of the way I always saw it too.
Like Jonah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a faith.
Yeah. Peter's mother-in-law. It was nice that Jesus showed special attention to a mother-in-law. She was in bed with a fever, probably one that would have even taken her life. Jesus touched her hand and the fever left. She got up immediately and began to serve him. So she was healed immediately, totally. The man with dropsy. Dropsy is actually a debilitating disease. Boy, am I going to get that out. Debilitating disease. Modern terminology would actually call it kidney disease or congestive heart failure. The retention of fluid is a primary symptom, basically. One day when Jesus was eating in the home of a prominent Pharisee, he noticed that in front of him was a man suffering with dropsy. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him away. Did he take his hand? Did he grab him by the arm? Take him by the shoulders? Interesting to know, but Jesus just took hold of him. But it's amazing how Jesus just looked up and saw him and knew right away, like, this man's suffering with this disease, and he knew what it was, and immediately just said, I'll take hold of him.
Oh, yeah.
The purpose of the miracles. No other man in history can lay claim to the kind of works that Jesus did. No one else has cleansed lepers, opened blind eyes, raised the dead. Why did Jesus do these things? A, to authenticate the mission of Christ. Every miracle Jesus performed demonstrated creative power. It was God's way of authenticating the Messiah mission of Christ. While this was not the primary purpose of Jesus' miracles, they definitely had this effect. Once the Jews said to him, What sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? They wanted him to work a wonder as a token of his authority. Jesus had already overcome the suggestion of the devil's temptation in the wilderness. Would the multitudes have believed he was the Messiah if he had accomplished, or if he had accommodated them? Probably not. They would have thought of something that was wrong about the procedure. They were not sincere. Jesus said, if I had not done among them the work which no other man did, they had not had sin. But now they have both seen and hated both me and my Father, that it may be fulfilled that is written in their law. They hated me without a cause. Now Jesus met their demands for a sign by the challenge of a sign which they did not understand. He said, you destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. But he spake of the temple of his body. Also to demonstrate the loving compassion of God. God proved through the miracles Christ performed that he indeed loved and cared for suffering humanity. He didn't have to heal the man with the withered hand, or the blind man, or the Syrophoenician woman. He did it because he wanted to. He was moved with compassion when he saw the multitude in such need. Jesus performed many unrecorded miracles out of compassion. His ultimate purpose in the physical healings, this is some side notes, was not just to ease the pain or condition in a moment, but to affect the whole person, body and spirit. This is especially seen in the miracle of the woman who touched the hem of his garment. She started to move away, satisfied with receiving what she came for. But Jesus stopped her and the entire procession, asking, who touched me? They brought her to Jesus, and there in the dust at his sandaled feet she told him all the truth. The truth included her bitterness, resentment, and anger at having to bear this plague for 12 long years. Once she had emptied out all that she had bottled up within her for those years, Jesus said, daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. She was not really whole until she had experienced inner healing. At some point, each of us have to experience that same spiritual inner healing that Christ brings to be holy, or truly whole. Also to demonstrate his dominion over all elements of nature and of the spirit world. When Jesus spoke to the winds and the waves, they heard their master's voice. They had no choice but to obey. So when the demons heard his voice, they knew it was their sovereign speaking. They had to go. When he cursed the fig tree, it straightway withered. When his hands touched the bread and fish, they multiplied. Now also to fulfill the Old Testament prophecies that the Messiah would heal men's bodies as well as their souls. Perhaps there is a lesson to be drawn from each of the miracles. For example, a message that comes through in the healing of the man born blind, the individual cannot sin before birth. So obviously they were pointing out the fact that, what sin did he commit?
Yeah.
What sin did his parents commit? That all suffering or physical ailments are not the result of sin. It is a grievous thing to insist that all sickness is a direct result of sin. This was the error of Job's friends also. Okay. That religious men are often the blindest. Absolutely. Characteristics of Jesus' miracles. They were performed in all kinds of places. At a wedding. At a funeral. They are different. There is a difference. In a graveyard. Not at the same place of the wedding.
Okay.
Just the funeral. In a synagogue. In a private home. On the seashore. In a garden. On a mountain. pool, and in a boat.
And they both
Boat. Alright, now on 3 occasions, Jesus spat while accomplishing the miracle.
What?
Spat. S-P-A-T.
Oh.
Not loogied.
Right. Spat. No shrapnel. Nothing semi-solid.
Yeah.
I can speak like this because there's no women, so. I would have already sent him in the dry heaves at that point. I gotta love it, hey. I don't do it here, I'll be doing it there and now Alright, 5 of his miracles were performed on the Sabbath day. So 5 Sabbaths.
Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine the meltdowns? The Pharisees. Ooh.
If you got a problem you doing miracles on a Sabbath, why don't y'all stop taking collections?
I know.
That's work too.
If you don't leave me alone, I'm going to perform another miracle on the Sabbath. I'll throw you into a tailspin.
Oh,
Right along with the scroll.
oh yeah.
Twice, Jesus was filled with amazement during a miracle. Which one we already covered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He groaned during another. He actually wept during a miracle. During one miracle. The last miracle before his ascension was the multitude of fishes. So just as there were doubters in Jesus' own day, there are those today who find it difficult to believe that he actually performed these miracles. If, however, only one miracle could be claimed as historical, this would be sufficient to demonstrate that the miracles are both possible and probable. Such an event is the resurrection of Christ. The evidence that reliable witnesses claim to have seen Jesus alive after his death is incontrovertible. The only explanation that makes sense of the evidence is that he was miraculously raised from the dead. Those who disagree must produce some convincing alternative explanation for the empty tomb. If the resurrection did take place, then it suggests that other miracles were not only possible, but probable. The fact is, the days of miracles did not cease with the departure of Christ. The miracle of tongues occurred on the birthday of the church. The miracles of healing and deliverance continued beginning with the healing of the lame man at the temple gate. Throughout the Acts narrative, the miracles continue, and they went forth and preached everywhere, the Lord working with them and confirming the word with signs following. The scriptures do not indicate that they would cease during the dispensation. They have, in fact, not ceased until this day. Thousands can testify to the healing power of God. Millions can confirm the power of God to deliver from sin, habits, and even demon possession in this century. Many others can testify to miracles of provision. All the things Jesus did during his earthly ministry, he still does today.